Welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while since I did my part 1 of the exploring the vibrant history of Black Dandyism movement, but I just wanted to find the perfect time and do a well-researched video. But if you've seen my video exploring the vibrant history of the Black Dandyism movement, you'll know that fashion is never just about clothing. It's about power, identity, and resistance. In that first installment, we explored how Black men and women from Harlem to Brazzaville transformed elegance into a language of pride and deviance. This video is the next chapter, inspired in part by my Met Gala 2025, a tribute to Black fashion and history video, where I reflected on how global stages can spotlight Black creativity. I wanted to go deeper into the African side of this story, because if the streets gave us the dandy, the political arena gave us something just as powerful: African leaders who turned dress into symbol of independence, dignity, and national identity. Now, before we begin, I want to make it clear that this video isn't about endorsing or defending these leaders' politics at all. It's about analyzing how they used fashion as a form of expression and power. In this video, we'll explore the fashion legacies of 4 of Africa's most influential leaders. Haile Selassie of Ethiopia, whose imperial regal of military uniforms fused ancient tradition with global diplomacy. Excuse my pronunciation. Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, who balanced European tailoring with Kente cloth to embody Pan-African pride. Mobutu Sese Seko of Zaire, who rejected colonial suits in favor of the Abacost and Leopard-Skin hat, making style the centerpiece of his Authenticité philosophy. Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, whose suits, robes, and iconic Fly-Whisk symbolized the meeting of tradition and modern nationhood. By the end of this video, you'll see how their wardrobes were not simply about personal taste, but deliberate tools of statecraft, projecting sovereignty and vision in a world that had long denied Africa its dignity. And you'll see also how their approach to dress connects directly back to African dandyism, a movement where style itself became a declaration of freedom. So if you haven't already, I encourage you to check out part 1, exploring the vibrant history of Black Dandyism movement for a deeper foundation, and of course my Met Gala 2025 breakdown, which sparked this series. Together, these videos form a journey through style, politics, and Black identity across continents and centuries. Chapter 1: Ethiopian and Eritrean Royal Fashion, Haile Selassie Era. Haile Selassie, Emperor of Ethiopia from 1930 to 1974, was not only a political and spiritual figure, but also a global style icon. His wardrobe was a powerful fusion of Ethiopian heritage and European influence, reflecting his role as a bridge between Africa and the international stage. The Royal Wardrobe, a fusion of traditions. Haile Selassie's personal style and the broader Ethiopian royal fashion during this reign were deeply rooted in traditional yet adapted to the evolving global landscape. Imperial robes and cultural symbolism. Traditional Ethiopian regal was heavily embroidered with gold thread, featuring motifs such as the Lion of Judah, crosses, and intricate patterns symbolizing divine authority. The emperor often wore flowing ceremonial robes made of velvet or silk, paired with a heavily adorned crown, These garments reflected Ethiopia's ancient imperial history, linking his rule to biblical King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. European-inspired military uniforms. As Ethiopia modernized, Haile Selassie adopted European military-style attire, incorporating tailored suits, epaulets, European-inspired military uniforms. As Ethiopia modernized, Haile Selassie adopted European military-style attire, incorporating tailored suits, epaulets, sachets, and medals. However, these were customized with Ethiopian details, including embroidered insignia, gold braiding, and Amharic script. His use of European-style uniforms asserted his position on the world stage, aligning him with global leaders while maintaining his African identity. Headwear and accessories. The emperor frequently wore traditional Ethiopian headdresses of European-style peaked caps adorned with gold braiding. His royal wardrobe also included embroidered capes, a common feature of Ethiopian aristocracy, adding to his regal presence. Influence on African and diasporic leadership fashion. Haile Selassie's regal aesthetic became a blueprint for many African leaders seeking to establish authority and national identity post-independence. His combination of military precision with traditional embellishment influenced the Rastafarian connection and global legacy. Haile Selassie's image became central to the Rastafarian movement, particularly through his meticulously curated fashion. Rastafarians regard him as a divine figure, and his regal presence continued to influence Rasta-inspired fashion. The red, gold, and green color schemes, symbolic of Ethiopia and Pan-Africanism. Military-style coats and robes seen in reggae culture. Beaded jewelry and Ethiopian crosses inspired by Ethiopian Orthodox traditions. Reggae artists such as Bob Marley incorporated Haile Selassie aesthetic in performances, further solidifying his visual legacy in Black global culture. The role of Ethiopian and Eritrean nobility in fashion. Ethiopian and Eritrean aristocracy played a crucial role in preserving and promoting royal fashion. Women of the imperial court, including Empress Menen Asfaw, Haile Selassie's wife, wore elegant white muslin dresses known as Habesha kemis, embroidered with gold or silver thread. These dresses remain a staple of Ethiopian and Eritrean fashion today. Noblemen and military leaders followed Haile Selassie's example, donning hybrid styles that blended local textiles with Western tailoring. Ethiopian and Eritrean textiles and tailoring. Shaman and Netela, fine hand-woven white cotton garments with colorful embroidery, worn as everyday and ceremonial attire. Gold and silver embroidery seen in both royal and religious attire, reinforcing the connection between divine authority and clothing. Leather and beaded accessories. Nobles and warriors often adorned themselves with finely crafted leather, garments, and beaded jewelry, elements that influence contemporary Afro-diasporic fashion. Conclusion: Haile Selassie's fashion legacy was not just about appearance, it was a statement of power, resistance, and African dignity. His ability to seamlessly merge European tailoring with Ethiopian royal tradition solidified his status as a global style icon. Today, his influence can be seen in everything from the suits of African presidents to Rastafarian aesthetics and even luxury fashion brands that draw inspiration from Ethiopian imperial garments. Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah, who also wore military-style suits adorned with African symbolism. The first Prime Minister and later President of Ghana from 1957 to 1966 was more than a revolutionary leader. He was the face of a newly independent Africa, and his fashion choices became part of his political language. Nkrumah's wardrobe symbolized the meeting of modern statecraft with African identity, projecting a vision of pride, dignity, and independence. The President Wardrobe, Nation Building Through Style. Nkrumah's fashion reflected his mission to redefine African leadership in the mid-20th century. His clothing was not only about personal style, but also carefully crafted political statement that embodied both modernity and African pride. Tailored suits with African identity. In most public appearances, Nkrumah wore sharply tailored Western suits, not as imitation, but as assertion. These suits positioned him among world leaders, signaling discipline and diplomatic sophistication. Yet, he often added subtle African touches, patterned ties, symbolic pins, and fabrics that carried local meaning. His clothing spoke to a form of cultural negotiation. Ghana could engage the world without surrendering its identity. Kente cloth and traditional influence. Beyond uniforms, Nkrumah frequently wore kente, the iconic hand-woven cloth of the Ashanti people. He would drape the cloth over one shoulder in the classical style of Ghanaian royalty, fusing traditional authority with his modern political image. By wearing kente during state function and international appearance, Nkrumah elevated it from local regalia to a symbol of Pan-African pride, the Pan-African aesthetic. Nkrumah's style wasn't just personal, it was ideological. His wardrobe embodied the Pan-African spirit, blending the sharp lines of European suits with the vibrant textiles of Africa. Every outfit was a visual declaration. Africa was no longer in the shadows of colonial powers, but stepping into the world stage with dignity and originality. Through his clothing, Nkrumah presented himself not only as the leader of Ghana, but also a representative of united Africa, wearing the struggle for independence and the pride of liberation on his sleeve, quite literally. Mobutu Sese Seko of Zaire, whose preference for grand traditional attire and tailored suits was reminiscent of Haile Selassie's dual approach. Mobutu Sese Seko and the politics of Authenticité. Mobutu Sese Seko, president of Zaire from 1965 to 1997, was not just a ruler. He was a master of image making. His fashion choices became central to his political philosophy, known as Authenticité, which rejected colonial influence and promoted a distinctly African identity. Mobutu's wardrobe was as much about symbolism as it was about personal style, turning his image into a tool of statecraft. The presidential wardrobe, rejecting the West, defining Zaire. Mobutu's fashion represented a deliberate break with European traditions and a bold attempt to craft a modern African aesthetic for the world to see. The Abacost, a new national uniform. Perhaps Mobutu's most famous fashion contribution was the Abacost, short for Abale costume, meaning down with the suit. This short-sleeve, collarless jacket replaced the Western business suit, and Mobutu's encouraged, even enforced its adoption across Zaire. The Abacost was presented as a symbol of independence, stripping away colonial influence while still maintaining a polished, statesman-like appearance. Leopard-skin hats and royal symbolism. Mobutu's iconic leopard-skin hat became a personal trademark, and a symbol of power. In many African traditions, the leopard represented strength, authority, and kingship, qualities Mobutu sought to embody. By making it a part of his daily attire, he projected himself as both modern leader and a traditional chief, fusing political power with cultural legitimacy, military flourishes, and dictatorial authority. Although Mobutu rejected Western suits, he retained elements of military dress. His uniforms often carried gold epaulets, medals, and sachets, asserting his command and dominance. These touches reinforced his image as a strongman leader, while the Abacost and leopard hat grounded him in the authentic African identity. Authenticité as visual politics. Mobutu's fashion was more than personal preference. It was political ideology made visible. By rejecting ties, Western suits, and colonial aesthetics, he demanded that Zaireans embrace their own cultural identity. At the same time, his elaborate dress elevated him above the ordinary citizen, positioning him as the embodiment of Zaire itself. Skin hat, Mobutu turned clothing into propaganda. His wardrobe wasn't just about style, it was a uniform of nationalism, authority, and spectacle. Jomo Kenyatta and the style of nationhood. Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, who incorporated tailored suits with African patterns and beadwork. His impact even extended beyond Africa to influential figures in the Caribbean and African American communities who viewed his fashion as an extension of Black sovereignty. Jomo Kenyatta, the first Prime Minister and later President of Kenya from 1963 to 1978, is remembered as the father of the nation. His wardrobe was a visual extension of his politics, blending modern statesmanship with traditional Kikuyu identity. For Kenyatta, dress was not simply about appearance, it was about embodying the spirit of newly independent Kenya. The presidential wardrobe, tradition meets modernity. Kenyatta's fashion reflected his dual mission to present himself as a modern African leader while honoring the cultural roots that shaped him. Tailored suits with African touches. In international settings, Kenyatta often wore European-style suits. These outfits placed him on equal footing with global leaders, but he frequently paired them with accessories that marked his Kenyan heritage, such as fly-whisks, beaded ornaments, or patterned ties, inspired by local textiles. His clothing subtly balanced Western diplomacy with African pride, traditional robes, and Kikuyu heritage. At home, Kenyatta was often seen in flowing traditional robes, sometimes made from richly patterned fabrics. These garments echoed Kikuyu chieftain styles, visually linking him to Kenyan pre-colonial leadership. The choice of traditional dress reinforced his image as a leader, rooted in people's culture, not just as politician molded by colonial education. The Fly-Whisk, a symbol of authority. Perhaps Kenyatta's most iconic accessory was the Fly-Whisk, a traditional emblem of authority in many Eastern African societies. Always carried in hand, it became part of his signature look. The Fly-Whisk was more than ceremonial. It was a statement that his authority was grounded in indigenous traditions of leadership rather than imported colonial symbols. Clothing as nation building. Kenyatta's style was not only personal but profoundly political. By combining Western suits with traditional robes and symbols, he projected the image of a leader who could guide Kenya into modernity without abandoning its cultural foundations. His wardrobe embodied the idea of synthesis. Kenya as a modern nation state, with deep African roots. In the global arena, Kenyatta's suits made him a statesman. At home, his traditional garments and Fly-Whisk made him a father figure, a bridge between past and present, tradition and progress. Conclusion: fashion as power, pride, and Pan-African expression. From Addis Ababa to Accra, from Kinshasa to Nairobi, Africa's founding fathers used fashion as a language of leadership. Each man crafted a wardrobe that reflected his political vision and cultural identity. Haile Selassie fused Ethiopian imperial regal with European military tailoring, projecting ancient legitimacy alongside modern statehood. Kwame Nkrumah combined tailored suits with Kente cloth, turning his image into a symbol of Pan-African pride and independence. Mobutu Sese Seko rejected colonial suits in favor of the Abacost and Leopard-Skin hat, crafting a national style rooted in his ideology of Authenticité. Jomo Kenyatta paired Western suits with Kikuyu robes and his iconic Fly-Whisk, embodying the tension between tradition and modern governance. While I do not endorse or agree with their political philosophies or the ways they exercised power, analyzing their fashion reveals something profound. Clothing was never mere fabric. It became a language, a visible expression of sovereignty, identity, and aspiration in a world that had long denied Africa's its dignity. This intersects powerfully with African dandyism. The sapeurs of Congo and African dandies across the continent use style as resistance, pride, and self-definition. Similarly, these leaders translated the same principle onto a national and global stage. Though robes, suits, ceremonial hats, and symbolic textiles, they told stories of authority, lineage, and aspirational without speaking a word. Fashion, in this context, is paradoxical. It is simultaneously personal and political, aesthetic and ideological. It reveals both the individual and the collective, the ruler and the nation, the self and history. The suits, robes, abacosts, capes, and Fly-Whisks are not mere adornments. They are instruments of narrative. They are a way to carve dignity out of centuries of marginalization, to assert presence where absence had long been assumed. In examining their wardrobe, we glimpse a profound truth. Style can be revolutionary even without guns or speeches. It can shape perception, craft legacy, and claim space. It reminds us that liberation is not only fought in battles or legislation, but also imagined, performed, and worn, stitch by stitch, pattern by pattern, on the body of a people and continent. Fashion becomes memory, power, and possibly woven together, the very fabric of freedom. If you reached this far, thank you so much for watching, and I hope this video gave you a deeper appreciation for how fashion, even at its highest levels of power, can reveal something about identity, resistance, and the complexity of post-colonial Africa. If you learned something new or this perspective gave you something to think about, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know this kind of content matters to you. And of course, subscribe if you haven't already, because we're just getting started and I've got more deep dives for you. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think the way these leaders used clothing helped liberate Africa's identity? Or did it sometimes reinforce the same systems of power they claim to resist? Let's talk about it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to hear your take, and I'll see you on my next one. Bye!